Issues raised by the Me Too and Time's Up movements since October 2017 are important ones in contemporary society. This Me Too and the Arts display is meant to make a space for reflection, learning, and a civic conversation about those issues. What does a civic conversation look like? What models do we have? I was able to gather a number of individuals from the arts and advocacy communities to have just such a conversation. We discussed the impact of Me Too, questions such as, can one separate art from the artist, and their many perspectives. Put together, they are the beginning of a conversation that shows that the issues are multiple, nuanced, that there are many perspectives, that there is much that we know, and there's much that we're still figuring out.
Violence against women and girls is not a new issue. It existed long before the hashtag ever became popular. And it will continue to exist unless there's continued commitment, continued investment.
636,000 people are sexually assaulted every year in Canada. This is a huge issue. It is a public health issue and is an urgent issue. And so Me Too actually made it easier for a lot of folks to speak about sexual violence.
Je pense que la violence est là, elle est présente, sauf qu'elle agit de façon différente d'après comment elle lit notre genre. Donc, par exemple, je ne me sens pas sexualisée, parce que je ne suis pas un objet de désir pour un homme hétérosexuel, cisgenre. Mais je suis un objet ou je suis un sujet de menace. Parce que dans mon corps et dans la façon que je me présente, je propose une autre façon d'être, un autre genre qui n'a pas de lieu.
The way in which we talk about artist labor is also part of the problem, I think, as institutions. You know, there's a glorification of certain kinds of behaviors that can be masked under like artist genius or eccentricities or whatever, these kinds of things.
Problematic artists aren't going away. And great art is maybe always going to be twinged with a little bit of problem. You know, the deeper we get into looking at justice across all range and all manner of things.
Historical cases are the, in a way, simplest to deal with because we know the end of the story. If they're living, there's a different problem because we don't know the end of the story. We need to proceed with a great deal more caution.
Just because someone was a bad actor, it doesn't obviate their role in our understanding of art, culture, the aesthetic experience. And at the same time, I think that we absolutely need to underscore that there is no place in our society and our institutions for people to take advantage of their positions of authority.
Je pense toujours au cas de Picasso parce qu'on vient de la même région. Donc il est vraiment une très forte influence pour moi parce que j'ai grandi avec l'ombre de Picasso partout. Mais en même temps, il était violent, misogyne, un homme qui a détruit la vie de beaucoup de femmes.
I mean, I've been to every Picasso museum in the world. Knowing what I know now, do I feel differently? I think the truth is I do. I mean, of course you can separate the art from the artist, but can you?
Rather than erasure, it seems to me that a dialogue that is partly biographical and partly contextual about how they worked and about some of those questions and issues of power needs to be added as a layer to how we understand their practice and we read their practice.
As a museum, in some ways, we're kind of akin to a library almost, where, you know, one is not pulling books off the shelf because one doesn't like the author as an actor. I feel as a curator, my job is to bring new information all the time to contextualize artwork and artists.
If the canon was more generous, one would be able to, in part, also talk about how work is produced and issues of power in the production of artworks in ways that maybe were also more diverse and more critical.
If it's a non-living artist, there is no way to have any influence on that person's behavior. If it is a living artist, I think that raises a whole different set of questions, because obviously any of us as both individuals and as leaders in institutions would want to ensure that we were not somehow inadvertently allowing behavior to continue or condoning it by acting as if nothing had occurred.
If violence against women is a norm, then it is somewhat absurd to expect that there wouldn't be artists who are perpetrators of that violence.
It's not like inspiration hits somebody and then like something comes out of the abstract. It comes out from what's happening, what their lived experiences are, what they're seeing around them.
So I think the real question is, how do you eliminate violence, not how do you separate art from the artist?
I worry, being somebody that works in Hollywood, whether or not we're going to really see change based on an industry that has built its reputation and built its business on beauty, on sexuality. Will we see change fast enough? I'm not so sure, but it's coming.
Social media as a platform has really been a very generative space for bringing up issues of social change. Bringing visibility to abuses of power. It is incredibly empowering platform. At the same time, social media can also be a very reductive space. It can reduce issues into black and white. It allows people to say things without great reflection and thought. And so what I'm hoping is that the Me Too and the arts display pushes against that reductive quality and actually allows a space for a bit more complex and nuanced civic conversation.
Unless we keep the conversation going, the danger is that the public gets very bored.
I'm not afraid that this is something that's going to vanish overnight. I'm not for one second thinking this is just going to be in the film industry for a year or two. No, I think we've changed everything.
And women have always been marginalized. Women of color, more so. Women of differing sexual orientations, more so.
We need to understand that trans folks are inexplicitly targeted for sexual violence, yet their access to supports, to shelter, to rape crisis centers is curbed by homophobia, transphobia, and ideas about who belongs and who doesn't in the gender justice movement.
Obviously, the harms to women and girls with the inequality that we live with in our world are readily apparent. But they're also killing us as men and boys. These ideas that we gotta be a man. You can't cry, you gotta tough it out, you can't ask for help, you can't look vulnerable. These are not healthy things for men to live with.
Something we haven't talked about is the need to be able to create an environment that images that address gender, address sexuality, including images that are problematic, are able to circulate, and where we're able to have a critical discourse and dialogue around them. I'm always concerned about censorship. I'm much more interested in difficult conversations.
The chance to raise your children well is not just a metaphor. It's actually, I think, vital.
Our real hope for the future is raising our children differently, is for them to value equity and equality, and for them to understand that this world can be organized in a different way.